This is my lunging session with Sarrazin. Sarrazin is 8 years old and he has been with me for a little more than a year, and I've started the training with him last summer, so he has had something like 8 months of training. And of course, during the winter, we had to stop working for 2 months approximately. I bought him from a teenage girl who uh, liked him very much, but rode him on very short reins, so that he was barely moving when I first um, rode him, and he wasn't lifting his feet. He would pop his head up, and his back was terribly rigid and flat. So I decided that I would not ride him right away, and that I would start the lunge work first. The other aspect of this horse is also that I think he has been a little spoiled, so that he didn't really know what's right and wrong. He didn't really understand all the aids, and I have spent a lot of time teaching him what's good, uh, and trying to put some order into all that. Um, as you can see now, he has just come out of his box and he's very stiff. Uh, his back is flat, he doesn't lift his feet, he's very slow, and he is a little bit in a U-neck at some moments, though not all the time. I am now walking very close to him because it makes him feel safer. If I stand further away from him, he has a tendency to become very stiff and too fast and choppy, and this doesn't help the lunging session at all. So it looks a little bit slow and maybe tedious to watch, but I've been trying different methods, and this is the one that has worked best until now. So what I'm looking for is for him to warm up, to loosen up his muscles, and to start stretching the neck, because even though he's in a horizontal frame in this moment, he's still very stiff in his carriage. So the first thing that I'm going to look for is the stretch of the neck. So as I said, there is no point in starting to activate him more than that, because his back is still rather rigid. His shoulder is also very stiff, and if I give more activity to the hind legs, this increased energy is going to a dead end. It doesn't. He won't be working through the back. He won't be able to stretch his neck out yet and lift his shoulder and move more freely, which is what I'm looking for. So now he's gradually and rather slowly opening at the throat and starting to stretch the neck a little bit more. But he's not stable in this balance, and as you can see, every time he sees something, he pops his head up, which makes him disconnect even more the back and the front end. What he does also very regularly is look to the outside of the circle. So when he does that, what I'm trying to do is to get him to look inside the circle. I want his body to follow the line of the circle, because if I let him with a counter bend looking to the outside, um, and then what happens is that he's going to disconnect again. So I really need his body to follow the shape of the circle. And when he is in that, this is happening right now. So I put a little bit more tension in the on the lunge, and then I release, and then I push forward. And gradually, I'm doing this repeatedly, and gradually you will see that he um, stays more steadily on the circle, and then I can start and push him a little bit more. And now he's starting to draw draw his neck out a little bit more. And you can see that there is a beginning of a little bit more activity behind and also in front. You can see that his shoulders are moving a little bit more freely. They are going, the movement the shoulders are making is a little bit upwards and then forward. And this is a consequence of the increased activity in the hind legs. He is now starting to stretch a little bit more, and this is also a consequence of the increased activity. Now this is a good stretch, and as a reward I make him stop and I give him a treat. The reason why I do this is that because he was very confused when he came to us, and he really did not understand what I wanted from him. I think he has been handled with kindness but a little bit of ignorance. So he was just pushed on one side or the other, and he did not understand what was expected of him, which is why I've started to give him treats, and associating treats with with some words, so that he gets conditioned, and when I tell him, okay, that's good, then he knows it's good, and he begins to try more persistently to work in the sense that I want him to. So now we can see that he's still dragging his feet a little bit. He is not very concentrated, looking outside, and I keep doing the same. So I activate him, but slowly and gradually, because I don't want him to get all nervous and tense and running like a madman. And I try to keep him on a circle. And what I'm waiting to see is voila, is a little bit more stretch, so that I can send him into the trot. At the beginning, the trot is not stable at all, so he starts very slowly. When I push him, he starts to be too fast and choppy. He pops his head up. And again, what I'm doing is attracting his head towards me when he looks to the outside. Then I release, then I push with my whip. And gradually I get more and more stability, which is not the case yet. You can see he's throwing his head up, looking outside. Okay, look, throwing his head up again, getting slower and slower. These are all his resistive behaviors, because he does not readily do the effort of stretching actively. But this will come a little bit later, as you will see. So what I'm doing here is always the same. I try to attract his front part on the circle, then I release, then I push. When he pops his head up, I avoid pushing because that would really, like pushing a ram on a blocked door. It is not going to work. It's going to increase resistance, increase choppiness and rigidity. Now, step by step, you can see that his body is swinging a little bit more. He is um, stretching the neck a little bit more often, but he still lacks stability. Now, what he does when he drops his head down with a flat neck like that, he's also trying to disconnect. So really, as he's also losing activity, I've sent him into the canter because he usually canters rather easily. So if the trot is not getting any better, what I tend to do is use the canter because he loosens up better in the canter. And what I'm expecting him to do is to stretch into the canter so that when he starts to stretch the neck, I will make a transition into the trot, and the trot will normally become better than it was because he has more activity, which is the case now. You can see that he's starting to stretch a little more and then he tries to disconnect again. And really now the main part of my work is to try and strike the right balance between um, pushing to get more activity so that he steps under better, can start lifting the back a little better. But you see, he's not yet stable. He looks to the outside, but I think that on the whole, it is starting to get better. There is a little bit more thrust. Uh, his steps are a little bit longer and he is bending the upper joints of his hind legs more, even though, as I said, it is not steady and not completely regular. Now he's trying to disconnect by pulling his neck too much and making a flat neck too much forward and with the head a little bit to the outside. He's disconnecting again, he's losing the rhythm. So now I need to push a little bit more without sending him berserk on the circle too fast because he can really spin around like a tornado, and that he can do for hours. So it's a totally useless exercise to do with him. I really need to find this balance between stretch, relaxation, and activity. And this is the main part of my work with him at this moment. As I said, he was very much upside down, this horse, when he came to us, with a very hollow back, a big belly, and his head carriage was particularly high all the time. So that now when I ride him, I do ride him only at the walk and with the chambon because otherwise he's too fidgety and it is not useful to be ridden like that on a hollow back with the head very high up in the air. Now I think that the trot has become a little bit better, and that's why I make a transition into the walk. When he makes the transition into the walk, I try to keep him in an active walk. I'm going to push him a little bit in the walk so that before he stops, I at least hope that he's stretched and he's taking longer steps. Now I have changed rein, and as you can see, the right hand is his difficult hand, and whenever I change to the right hand, it's just as if he came out of his box again. He's completely stiff again, so that I cannot use the activity and the energy that I had at the trot on the left hand, I need to start all over again. In fact, I have to walk with him until he loosens up, starts to relax, so that I can ask him to stretch and then gradually get more activity. As you can see, he's again lifting some dust with his feet and making rather choppy and short steps. What I'm doing now is again the same. I'm trying to keep him on the circle. When he's back on the circle, I release a little bit the lunge and then I push. All the time I'm trying to keep the lunge straight so that it doesn't there's no loop in the lunge, because otherwise it can make shocks on the mouth, of course, when the tension varies all the time. So I try to keep a steady contact, soft if possible. Unless he looks to the outside, then I take a little bit more contact in the hand before I release, and then I push with the lunge in order to increase activity and start slowly to gain some thrust. Now he's starting to stretch his neck and open the throat, so that I'm very happy with that. And gradually I'm going to ask for more activity, but again I need to wait until he is with a little consistency following the line of the circle. Otherwise what I'm going to get is only agitation and a choppy trot. So now his walk is getting better. He's taking longer steps, even if he's not stretched very low. Now his head is coming up again. He's looking to the outside, and I have to do the same all the time. Gradually, of course, I can push with the whip more and more and keep a steady contact on the lunge as he's become more stable in his attitude. But it's quite progressive and it takes some time. And what I'm hoping for, of course, is that later on this will become shorter and shorter, and that we will be able to work in a useful trot for a longer period of time. Well, I think that the walk is not so bad, even if the right shoulder is still a little rigid. And now the walk is becoming a little bit longer. The gait is becoming a little bit longer, but he still is a little resistive. I think his head stays up, and the back isn't moving very much. But I decide to send him in the trot because I find that it's not getting any better at the walk. So now he gets a little excited because he has to trot before he's ready to. Then I send him in the canter because his canter is quite easy for him, I think, especially on the right hand. So now what I'm doing is giving more activity with the canter, and I'm hoping that he's going to unwind a little bit more easily in the canter than in the trot. So now I ask for a transition in the trot, and as you can see, the trot is, when he just comes out of the canter, the trot is a little bit, is rather good, but it doesn't stay that way very long, only a few steps, and then he starts trying to disconnect again, trying to chase me as if I was a fly bugging him with his head coming inside the circle, looking to the outside. So I send him into the canter again because I know that the canter can help him loosen up and unwind, and then I can obtain a better trot, so that I wait until he stretches into the canter before asking for a transition in the trot. And here it's going to take some time because he's not concentrated. Now he starts to stretch. I still do the same. I don't push when his head is high up, otherwise he's going to be even more excited. Here he stretches, and then I ask him to trot. He's still a little bit excited, and what I want him to do while is to stretch in the trot, which is why I take him on a slightly smaller circle, because when he's on a smaller circle, sometimes the bend is increased, and then it can also help to have a better gait, a better trot. Now as he has stretched in the trot, I make a transition in the walk. I try to get a good walk, which is not very easy because, well, he's not very consistent on the right hand. Now the walk is not bad, a little bit too slow, of course, but not bad because he has at least stretched and pulled his neck out. I keep walking to see what kind of a walk he can give me. This is not yet ideal, as you see, he's still a little bit U-necked. Well, and now we have stopped for a treat, and now he starts walking again. He's very slow and stretched, which that I'm happy for, even if there's no stability. Now I think that to gain more stability, I will need to work in the trot. And as he's stretching for a little while longer, as you can see, when he stretches better, he becomes terribly slow. But at this time, I still let him go slowly, even though ideally I would have I need a much more active walk than that. Now I try to put him in the trot. He breaks into a canter, but I don't pay too much attention to that because now I see that he's stretching rather nicely on the trot, even if there is no stability yet in him. Now I'm going to use the fact that he stretches to be able to push him a little bit more and ask for more activity in the trot. As you can see, I need to strike a balance between asking for activity and hoping that he will stay stretched, because if I push a little bit too hard, he starts getting agitated, and this really is not useful. So here I'm using the canter to get more activity in the trot, because when he stretches in the trot, he loses some activity, and the canter can help him gain activity and get a better trot. Now he stretches, but never for too long, so I still push him in the canter. And when he stretches, I um, make a transition in the trot, and now the trot is a little bit better. He's following the line of the circle with his body. He's overstepping, understepping, no, stepping under a bit better. And I am quite happy with what I see in the shoulders, in the upper joints of the hind legs, and also in the back. This is not bad at all for him. Also, his strides are longer, and as you can see, even if he is still trying to disconnect by making his neck too long and flat, I'm still able to send him forward before he disconnects, so that it is building into a better and better gait. Now he's again trying to disconnect by looking to the outside, or so I decide to to make a transition into the walk, because what I saw was not bad at all, and I find it's a good idea to reward him by walking again. And then I stop and give him a treat, because I think that the last trot was not so bad. The part with the work in hand. It is the day after the lunging session, because the day before was extremely hot, and I stopped working because Thomas was cooking under the sun. So I took over the day after that. This is the third session of work in hand I do with Sarrazin, and I was rather happy with it, because this is the first time that he really starts walking and being rather active for him, and also that he's staying in the on the circle, because usually what he was doing was crowding me very much and coming inside the circle and then stopping. So now, as you can see, I am trying to keep in on the circle with my outside rein, tapping his flank when he slows down or when he wants to stop. And I try also to keep an even contact on the inside rein, so that he goes on following the circle. Now I have tried, in fact, this is for the first time that I try to make a tentative of leg yield, but it doesn't really work. So now I make him stop on the outside rein and give him a reward, because really this is the first time that I had some results in the work in hand. Of course, my aim by doing the work in hand is to free the withers, so that he can start to step under, and also teach him the leg yield. But this is I need to do some more training in order to do that. Now I have changed the lead, so I think the result is pretty much the same as on the right hand. The left hand is usually easier for him, and I'm doing the same, trying to keep him on the same circle with the outside rein, uh, keeping the bend with the inside rein. I also realize now that as I'm telling this, that this is the first time that I do work in hand with the Chambon, and in fact I suppose that this must be why the result is better than it used to be without the Chambon. So now obviously I need to go on working on this, and I hope I'll be getting better results in the future. The written work is extremely unconclusive, as you can see. So I have decided not to really show it, because he's really between inactivity and spooking. So I guess I'll be